to infinity and beyond.
This is me. This is how I win.
Were you rushing or were you dragging? Answer!
You're a wizard, Harry.
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you.
No, I am your father.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
And here we go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back inside the film room. Zach Goins here with Jake Lawler.
Hello.
Quite the delay there. I was waiting on that one.
it's no, because you usually give me a little bit more time. I was kind of spooked by the suddenness of everything.
73 episodes in, we're still finding our rhythm here. Well, today we have not what we expected. Last week we closed it out saying we were going to watch Hamilton and talk about it today, but we had our calendar mixed up. Dates were wrong. Hamilton, as everyone knows, releases July 3rd, which is next week. So mark it down. That's for next week's episode. But today, we're doing another throwback review. Very topical. Talking about Jaws. All-time great, all-time classic. A little bit of news, and then we'll call it a day.
Love it. Let's get started.
Well, first off, we can't... It was a cliffhanger. It was a cliffhanger last week, knowing that you were making your film debut.
Yeah.
Tell us, Jake, how did it go? How was everything up at Zach's Hamburgers?
Oh, it was good. We had a really good shoot. Everybody came ready to go, focused on what we had to accomplish. We had a really good crew, and I think we did everything that we wanted to. It was a long shoot, but I think all in all, we're proud about how everything went. We're going to take a few days to kind of look over the footage and the audio and make sure we got everything that we needed. But coming away from it, I think that we're really proud of how it turned out.
How did Andy Lawler perform in his role? I know he was very nervous. He'd been
good. Yeah.
Taking it like method acting, getting in character, growing his hair out, growing his beard out.
He was good. He was really good. Better than it was funny because our camera guys and our director, Nick Stefopoulos, who's the guy that kind of we got connected with to help make it happen. We're all kind of like shocked about how talented he was, and it was just something that Connor and I had known, so it was good to kind of give him his moment.
It's surprising knowing that Miss Michelle Lawler is the actor in the family.
Yeah.
And she didn't even get a role. Did she mess up her audition or what?
No. we have a roll in our back pocket waiting to use. So
gotcha. You want to build up the credit behind your names before you break out the big guns on camera.
That's exactly what we need. We got to wait to establish ourselves before the A-listers come.
She actually turned you guys down when you approached her for the role.
Yeah, she was like, too small.
Good stuff, man. What's the timeline? What's the timeline here? When can we expect to see this?
I don't know. We will probably have some sort of cut that won't be available for the public within the next month or so. And then when we have that done, we'll probably reassess on when we can release it. But it will be coming. Just know that for
What
sure.
is what's the plan? What's the plan for the cut? Like how are you going to go about releasing it?
So we probably enter it into like festival submission to start with, just to kind of see what festivals would take it, what festivals we could option it off to make sure that we can kind of build some hype around it before we do a general release. But with everything in kind of the COVID world, we're not necessarily sure how things are looking in terms of film festivals. But I think that's the plan right now, is that once we have a cut that we're happy with, get on it, get able to send a cut out to kind of family and friends, and as well as mentors and people that work in the business, and then submit it to festivals and see where it goes from there.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait. Hopefully I get like an exclusive director's cut kind of preview screening. So, after all these years, but we'll have to wait and see. So. I'm excited for it.
You'll be on the VIP list for sure.
Heck yeah. It's all you can ask for.
Absolutely. You ready to get started with news?
Yeah, considering I didn't do anything exciting this week, let's just get straight into news. In the never-ending saga here, never-ending. We had back in the fall and over the summer, we had our never-ending saga of people getting cast in Dune, and now it's never-ending Tenet delays. So as we talked about to start last week's episode and then the episode before that, Tenet pushed back another 2 weeks from July 31st to August 12th. We'll now do a midweek release on a Wednesday to try and, I guess, they said that they're going to have a much longer window that it's in theaters and just kind of to try and give everyone something they're comfortable with. But as a result, as we talked about last week with the Disney Warner Brothers game of chicken, Mulan has now moved from its July date to August 21st. So now it won't open up in front of Tenet. Nobody wants to be the guinea pig. So reactions to that. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we had predicted. It's something that a lot of people had predicted anyway, and especially with the increase in cases across the country, as people are just really kind of not caring anymore. I'm assuming that this will not be the final time it gets delayed. I'm assuming probably it will be released contingent probably sometime in September. And that's really just a day-by-day thing as well. Anytime August, September, I think they'd be really solid. Not really towards the end of September, but really I think in the beginning and middle part of the month, they probably do as well as they could. But
that's what we got with it was a strategic move with the Wonder Woman move that we talked about last week, moving that to October 2nd. So now that opened up all of August, all of September. So if they need to, they can continue to do these 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there, pushbacks up until mid-September without really affecting the box office for Wonder Woman, should that stay put in October.
Yeah, and it's just something that we'll kind of continue to watch as the rest of the world will continue to watch about how these things play out. But I think it's really
I'm curious if that's going to affect these like re-releases, because that was kind of like to do it a week in advance to hype up new movies, and now that new movies are still another month and a half away.
I think that they might delay them a week or two, but I do think they need the re-releases to see how comfortable people are coming, or see how comfortable people are with coming to the theaters in general. I don't know if they'll stay put at the time that they are right now, but I do think they will have to come significantly before, like a significant time prior to the new movies coming out now, just to kind of gauge whether people are even comfortable coming.
Right, I'm with you there. So likely not the last update that we provide on movies getting delayed, but we did get a new look at something that's pretty safe off in the distance. I'd say a November release is safe for now, and that's Soul, Pixar's upcoming Best Picture winner, Best Animated Feature winner. Maybe Best Picture, who knows? Yeah. But we got a new 1 minute clip, 1 minute trailer, and it looks incredible, both like as a film and also just as far as the animation goes. Like, it's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of as good as advertised up to this point. It looks gorgeous. It feels gorgeous. I mean, it's just one of those things that everyone was excited for upon the first kind of rumblings of it and the first visual glance that we got. And it just continues to look more and more like you said, the best animated feature winner, and possibly a Best Picture nomination as well. So, I think that's going to be exciting to play out. It's going to be exciting to see as well, because it's just something that people have, especially us two, have been really focused on since we've kind of heard about it.
Yeah, and I mean, just as a refresher for everyone else out there, this is Pete Docter, one of Pixar's finest directors here. He's got Monsters, Inc. under his belt, Up, Inside Out, and now Soul coming soon. And that's about as good of a 4 that you could get from Pixar to boost up your resume. So hopefully, we talked about it with Onward that we got somewhat of the kick in the feels. Hopefully, Soul just takes us right to our very Pixar emotional roots.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't expect anything less from, the company that's given us so many brilliant films, and the director that's played a huge part in kind of shaping their future and shaping what they've made up to this point.
Definitely. Jake, I have some news for you that absolutely no one in the entire world asked for. That is, Charles Randolph will write, direct, and produce a movie about the early stages of COVID-19, the pandemic in Wuhan. Does anybody want, this is kind of the thing now where it's like a major event, whether this guy wrote Bombshell, so similar thing there. Big Short, which he won an Oscar for, so respect there. But with Bombshell, it was the same kind of thing. This big event happened at Fox News, and they double timed it to get it out and turn it around within a year or two. I don't think anyone within the next year or two is going to want to watch a movie about coronavirus.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that logical people know makes no sense, but regardless, this is not the last coronavirus movie that will be slated to come out. I mean, I think we can probably expect many and multiple different variations of the COVID world. And this is just the first iteration of what will be probably an annoyingly large amount of different films and interpretations of it. So
right, it's that the second that the Trump presidency ends, there's going to be 6 different movies in the works about everything that's happened in the last hopefully 4 years. But
mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's just
just one
everyone,
of those things.
Yeah. Moving on, we don't need to devote too much time to that one. Last, really, I guess, big piece of news for the week. This is one that I think I'm more excited about than you, Jake. But Margot Robbie will be the new face of Pirates of the Caribbean. She will star in a female-led version, not a reboot or a remake, but just a whole new adventure set in that world. Written by Christina Hodson, who wrote Birds of Prey. So they're collaborating once again. Instant reactions to that. I'm very excited because I'm huge on Margot Robbie. She's one of my probably top 5 actresses working right now. And I love everything about Birds of Prey and Harley Quinn and them together. So, and that we're both huge Pirates of the Caribbean fans. So I think that after 2 movies of not being excited about it whatsoever, this is the perfect move for me, at least, to get me re-excited about the potential here.
Yeah, this is going to be separate from the other Pirates of the Caribbean reboot unveiled in October with franchise veteran Ted Elliott and Chernobyl creator Craig Mazin hired to develop a story. So maybe this is the Pirates of the Caribbean multiverse. But
we might get a big crossover movie in 5 years.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's cool though. I think that Margot Robbie has always kind of had the magnetic personality on screen, and most notably with her roles as Harley Quinn, she's developed quite the fan following, which I think is important for when you're dealing with stuff that already has a large base of followers and supporters, to bring someone in that is established in that sort of communal way. And Christina Hodson, while Birds of Prey did not do as well as really kind of anyone that liked it had hoped for, I think it was well received critically, and I think that she already did. She did quite a good job, so I think it's going to be something definitely to keep your eye out for when we're looking about who's going to direct it, and then as we get more kind of information about what it's going to look like going forward.
And she's also, Christina Hodson wrote Bumblebee, which we both, maybe it wasn't anything groundbreaking, but we both enjoyed that pretty well. And then She's the writer for the upcoming Flash movie, which we heard all the big news about last week with the Michael Keaton Batman return. And then she's also writing the upcoming Batgirl movie. So, I mean, she's pretty thick into things with DC. So obviously someone over there has faith in her, and I'm glad to see that carry over into other properties as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But in terms of other stuff that's on the water,
there we go.
There is a creature alive today who has survived millions of years of evolution without change, without passion, and without logic. It lives to kill. A mindless eating machine. It will attack and devour anything. It is as if God created the devil and gave him jaws.
we are throwing it back to 1975 when Jaws came out. We weren't alive at all.
Nope.
But what is your first experience with Jaws? What's the first thing that you remember about it?
I remember the first time that I watched it. I don't remember how old I was, but I remember just absolutely being terrified by it, like being scarred by it. I still have a vivid memory of a nightmare where it wasn't even the ocean. I was swimming in a pool and the Jaws shark was in it. And I was not only scared of the ocean, but also of the pool. So I watched this movie and it's one that sticks with you. And I feel like it was the exact same. I remember I watched it last night as a rewatch, and I talked with my dad about it, and he was talking about when he saw it in theaters back when he was a kid, or I guess he was a teenager. But just, it's one that it's a hugely important movie for many reasons, and we'll get into that. But I mean, it's just one that you don't forget about. How about yourself with your first experience?
It's just one of those rite of passage movies, I think, with every Spielberg film, leading up basically from the 70s to the late 80s, where, he develops those kind of films, or even with Jurassic Park, I would say, that are accessible to really everyone before he starts dealing with, more deep thematic material. But Jaws is one of the things that I watched early on. Like most people, I would say I was probably 11 or 12 when I first watched it. And I was surprised about like how well it held up still. And, of course you hear the stories, like my mom, like you, was terrified of like taking showers when she watched it for the first time.
Anything water related.
Yeah, no, exactly. But I think that it is a top 3 Spielberg film. My personal top 3 is Indiana Jones, Jurassic Park, and Jaws, and there's not really an order to that. They're really basically interchangeable. And I think, like we said, or like you said, Jaws is probably one of the most pivotal films, might even be the most pivotal film of the 1970s. So it's definitely good to revisit it.
Yeah, and I mean, we're revisiting it 45 years later, but who would have known that a movie about a giant shark from 1975 would be so relevant right now, with the 4th of July right around the corner, people flooding to beaches despite major risks.
Yeah.
So, I think that America's really acting like the Amity Island beachgoers when it comes to coronavirus. And hopefully through the course of our review, if coronavirus isn't enough to scare you away from the beaches this upcoming weekend, maybe a good old-fashioned shark thriller terror attack can. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Should you turn on the narrator voice? I mean, people know this, but let's give a brief refresher of the plot here.
Let me get ready. All right. One early summer night on a fictional Atlantic resort to Amity Island, Chrissy decides to take a moonlight skinny dip while her friends party on the beach. Yanked suddenly below the ocean surface, she never returns. When pieces of her wash ashore, Police Chief Brody, played by Roy Schneider, suspects the worst. But Mayor Vaughn, Murray Hamilton, mindful of the lucrative tourist trade and the approaching July 4th holiday, refuses to put the island on a business-killing shark alert. After the shark dines on a few more victims, the mayor orders a local fisherman to catch the culprit. Satisfied with the shark they find, the greedy mayor reopens the beaches, despite the warning from visiting ichthyologist, maybe? Hooper, played by Richard Dreyfuss, that the attacks were probably caused by a far more formidable great white. One more fatality later, Brody and Hooper joined forces with flinty old Salt Quint, played by Robert Shaw, the only local fisherman willing to take on a great white, especially since the price is right. The three ride off on Quint's boat, the Orca, soon coming face to teeth with the enemy. Da-da-da.
Excellent. That was thrilling. Loved the voice.
Oh, thanks.
So, I mean, we talked about it. This is just like a all-time classic. 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, which obviously Rotten Tomatoes was not a thing. So that's like, I guess, retroactively rated based on the reviews of the time. But, I mean, this was just important for so many reasons. We kind of touched on it a couple weeks ago with our review of like the different decades, but this was the original summer blockbuster.
Yeah, I mean, it was made for less than 9 million and went over to make more than 470 million in global returns. I think that it was, and before Star Wars, it kind of held the spot. And I think it really is. It's the first modern day movie marketing. There's 2 million spent for TV spots, interviews, posters, marketing tie-ins, and the result was a massive hype before its release when it came out in theaters in the summer of 1975. Like you said, it's the original summer blockbuster, and I think that the reason why people call back to it, not only because of how important and how impactful and how influential it really was in terms of how studios market films, what type of films are being made, what people look for, and what they kind of measure analytically in terms of success, is also the fact that it is probably one of, it is definitely and definitively one of the best qualitative blockbusters as well. And just in terms of as a pure film, as film goes, I still think it's one of the best movies ever made. It's one of my favorite movies ever made. And it is brilliant for so many reasons other than just being successful and appealing.
Right. Like that was one of the things that stood out the most to me, especially on a rewatch. Like you hear about all of the legendary, like it's almost like mythologized of like how important this movie is and how great it is, but it's not an overreaction or an exaggeration. Like, sure, this is the massive, successful, like first ever popcorn summer blockbuster that we talk about, which now takes the form of like Hobbs and Shaw or like something like that, which we both loved. But I mean, Hobbs and Shaw isn't like a prestige film. There's a very big difference between, for the most part, what the box office smashes that dominate June and July are in 2020 and 2019 than what this is. Like this didn't sacrifice quality in exchange for a massive return on investment. It got 4 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture, with 3 wins, which were Best Sound, Best Film Editing, and Best Score, which brings me to one of the most important things here. The most iconic 2 notes in music, I dare say. Like John Williams, one of the best right here. I mean, you could go through hours talking about all of the iconic soundtracks he's made, but I mean, this is with just the dun, like everyone, you play that 2 notes on any instrument or even just like saying it, people know exactly what it is. They know what's happening. They know the fear that's associated with that.
Yeah, I think, really, and there's so much to talk about with this film, and you really kind of hit the nail on the head when it comes to the music. John Williams is definitely the most iconic composer when it comes to film. I mean, what he did with Jaws, what he did with Indiana Jones, what he did with Jurassic Park, what he did with E.T., Star Wars. It's just one of those things where developing really like what makes an iconic film, a truly iconic film, not only to capture, the zeitgeist or to capture kind of the essence of the time that you're in, but to make it in such a way that it lives on past, a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And Jaws is something that, people born in the 2000s still know, and they've never even seen it, just because of they've either heard the music or they've seen the poster, or they know at least kind of in passing what it's about. But it's the shark movie to end all shark movies before the genre was a thing, and every movie since has tried to kind of live up to the brilliance of it, and hasn't quite reached it.
I want to ask you, going back a couple weeks, because we just did the best book to movie adaptations. Now, shoot this down if it's been too long since you read that book, but I haven't read the book. How does this? Obviously, it lines up well because of your ranking a couple weeks ago, but just what is the experience like watching this as someone who's read the book? Because that's something that I haven't ever considered, really.
Yeah, it's I think it's, like I said before, it's the book is very complicated, and I haven't read it in quite a while, so I don't necessarily know how it matches up. But the last time I rewatched it, which was recently for this podcast, I think Spielberg does a great job of making sure that his stuff lasts quite a while. I mean, Raiders, I think, is still probably and arguably one of my favorite films of all time. And I think that the reason is because it can still hold up, and Jaws is exactly the same way. I don't really know necessarily as much in terms of as a clear-cut book adaptation, but in terms of a film, I think that, it is one of those things that transcends the genre that it's in, or transcends the time that it was in. Just because, the writing, I think the editing is and of course, it won Best Oscar for film editing, but the editing is so slick and it's so smart, especially when Roy Schneider is on the beach and he's watching kind of everybody.
And you get the zoom.
Yeah. And, when it keeps kind of switching as people run past him. But it's like everything in there. And then, of course, Quint Robert Shaw's iconic USS Indianapolis story is still one of the greatest scenes in film history. So there's so much stuff it's so good in here.
I think another thing that really stands out is that, I mean, a lot of times with creature features and something that's like the main, like you're just especially now, you're like dumping money into it with massive CGI creatures and just really flexing your muscles as far as that goes. But like, I love the fact that for the first third, maybe first half, you don't really you see the fin and that's it. Like you don't know just how big this shark is. It's just like building that suspense. You see tons of stuff from like the underwater point of view, like as if you are the shark. And like I said, you see the fin. But until it really breaches when the chief is like turned around, when he's saying like chumming the water and he turns around and then it breaches behind him, that's when the first time that you really see like, oh my gosh, like this is not what you think of when you think of a regular shark.
Yeah. No, I mean, and it's funny because it's similar to the story about Apocalypse Now, with Marlon Brando showing up 100 pounds overweight to film Apocalypse Now. So what they had to do is conceal him in shadow, and that ended up being so much more effective. It's the same thing with Jaws, where apparently the animatronic was like living hell to work with. So, they, for reasons not necessarily being the ones that were originally conceived of, they had to kind of do the minimalist approach and had to kind of rely on tone and music and the absence of space and kind of setting things up instead of actually seeing the shark up until, the second half of the film. And, I think that works so much more effectively than you just seeing it the entire film, because, I think that the fear of the ocean is about not knowing what's around you, and to be able to encapsulate that, even if it was by accident, just makes it all the more effective and thrilling.
Yeah, I think that another thing is that besides obviously the suspense and the terror associated with the shark, like that's not the majority of the movie, I would say. I mean, obviously it revolves around catching the shark and the shark attacks, But what's equally important is like these three guys. We're on a boat with the scientist, the chief, and then the old fisherman that's telling these crazy tales, and they're like completely different, all three of them. Like obviously Chief Brody is like just trying to do whatever he can to save the day, and then Hooper is the like, okay, I'm doing everything by the book, I know all this is not how you're supposed to do it. And then there's Quint, who's just completely out of left field, doing his own thing, doesn't play by the rules, smashes the radio so they can't call for help. Like I think that the banter between them, just seeing them bounce off each other and figure out how they can work together to accomplish this goal is even better than any sort of like suspense from the shark attacks.
Yeah, and the performances are really spectacular, all in their kind of own right. With Brody, kind of with his reservedness, especially his fear of the ocean, which is kind of relayed to you brilliantly through sort of like unsaid and briefly touched on exposition. And his kind of unwillingness to go to the ocean, being, the big city cop that transitioned, and him having to adjust with the elements of a terror that he really never really wanted to deal with. Was very interesting. And, Hooper, played by Richard Dreyfuss, which is just one of kind of the, his magnetic charm is felt everywhere on the imprint of the screen. And, his very hectic and complicated and very strange relationship with Quint as they kind of go on to the Orca to try to find Jaws is something that is both memorable and uneasy. And I think that the great thing about this movie is it allows you moments to breathe. And I think that when a horror film, when a creature feature, when a suspenseful movie like this kind of berates you with suspense and action, it really kind of numbs you to that feeling. But when it gives you levity, when it gives you moments to catch your breath, when it gives you moments of real human interaction, something like the USS Indianapolis, and before, when they're all sharing the scars that they've gotten, it makes the scenes where they're in danger all the more impactful.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned it with the story, but just like when they're sitting around getting drunk, which I don't know if you would do that if there was like a gigantic shark coming after you. I would probably be trying to keep my wits about me. But just that whole banter between them, I love the I had forgotten about some of those like minor intricacies because it had been a while since I'd seen it. But to see that them all gathered around the table going back and forth, I love that. I do have a question for you though. Have you seen the other movies? Because obviously with this smash hit, they made more. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on, we've got Jaws 2, Jaws 3D, Jaws The Revenge, following in 78, 83, and 87. Have you seen any of those?
I have not. And I think the only other shark movie I've seen is The Shallows.
Great shark movie.
Which is a great shark movie. And that shark is so much more violent and mean than Jaws. I mean, because Jaws is just kind of like just a product of his environment. He's just really just sort of, and with the shallow shark, he is like actively evil.
Right. He's just a dick.
Yeah. So quick recommendation for another shark movie. But, I think that with Jaws.
You're not going to recommend The Meg?
I cannot recommend it because I haven't seen it, but I've heard things about it. But with like Jaws is a perfect movie. I think that no one is really in argument of that. And it seems strange why you would mess with perfection in the first place.
Right. So
I've not seen any of them, but I don't really care to watch any of them either.
I can't blame you, but so obviously the following three movies did not have Spielberg at the helm. The second one is it's justifiable, I guess. It's not terrible, but it's basically, there's a second shark. So, I mean, they kind of, right. There's not like too much really that is new. I can't remember at some point, I don't remember if it's the second one or the third one, but they kill one of the giant sharks by having it like bite down on an electrical wire and it zaps it and fries it. And then the third one is like a giant shark gets trapped in SeaWorld, which is they're getting out here. And then the fourth one, I don't think I've seen it. It says Chief Brody's widow believes that her family is deliberately being targeted by another shark in search of revenge. So that's like this shark. The shark community has been talking, and they are out to get Chief Brody. Also, that makes it sound like Chief Brody died at some point, which I don't remember. So sorry for the spoiler.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, maybe you can hear like the shark's internal monologue. It's really really talking about the grudge that it holds.
No, you know what it is that they give their interpretation of what happened at the Indianapolis.
Exactly. All of the millions of sharks feasting.
Oh yeah. And
go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to get kind of your take. I know we've talked about the USS Indianapolis scene for obvious reasons, but is there anything else that really, or any scene that really kind of sticks out in your mind as you've seen it over the years that really just kind of sticks with you as the time goes by?
I mean, obviously we haven't talked about it yet, but you're going to need a bigger boat. That's one of the most iconic lines of all time. And that comes after the first, like I was talking about earlier, the first breaching of it. So you're just as equally shocked as Chief Brody is to witness that and to know what you're up against. And then, I mean, I love the whole climax at the end. It's great from Hooper going down in the cage, you not really knowing if he's going to make it out alive. Quint, terrible way to go. What a way to go. And then, of course, the crow's nest shot and the explosion. Like that's quite the ending.
Yeah, no, absolutely. One of my favorite scenes is actually not the shark or anything going on. It's when Brody's son is imitating him at the dinner table. And I think that that's just a really great human moment in terms of developing character. And it's like we said, like we talked about, it's about the moments that allow you to breathe, allow you to kind of figure out what exactly it is. And there's so many reasons why Jaws is timeless, but also because it's not just a shark movie. It's a movie about avarice. It's a movie about greed. It's a movie about ignorance. It's a movie about so many different things. And a lot of that is built on Amity Mayer. And, you know, it's funny that we kind of have him in the White House right now with everything going on. So it's more timely than we would hope to imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I echo all of that. That who would have thought, man? Quick going back, pulled up the Rotten Tomatoes for the sequels since we were questioning how good they sound. Jaws 2, 60%, respectable.
Okay, not bad.
Jaws 3D, however, we dropped down to 10%.
Oh.
And Dennis Quaid is the star in that as Chief Brody's grown-up son. So,
okay.
Jaws: The Revenge, however, tagline, this time it's personal. 0%.
Wait, what?
Tough.
0%?
Critic consensus reads,
way.
Illogical, tension-free, and filled with cut-rate special effects. Jaws 4: The Revenge is a sorry chapter in a once proud franchise.
Oh, no. Oh, Michael Caine's in it.
Tough look.
Oh, man. 0? Yikes. Well, I guess it was personal. Yeah. Ouch.
That is true. That's why we should just stick with the first one.
Yeah, I think that this is the Jaws podcast, not the Jaws, the 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever version. So
yeah,
I think
agreed.
We're on the right track. Yeah, we're on the right track talking about this one.
There's a reason that this one is so rewatchable and that we're reviewing it. So just when it comes to watching it, just watch this one, watch it over again. You don't need to venture. Maybe test out 2 if you want, but don't go too deep into the Jaws cinematic universe.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people that are, at least that I know, that are kind of worried about watching old movies and see if they hold up. And every time I watch this, I think it honestly gets better. You know, I don't think that there's any moment where it feels dated or it feels unable to kind of procure someone's attention or hold someone's attention. It is just as enthralling and engaging as it was, I'm assuming, in 1975. And if you have any reservations about watching a movie that didn't come out within the last 10 years, I would suggest this one can be on the list if you want to venture, if you haven't seen it.
Totally agree. So do you have any final thoughts about Jaws before we wrap things up? I know, quick podcast here, but hopefully this did it sent the message we wanted to try and scare people away from mass gatherings this upcoming weekend. Yeah. We're out here doing our best to save America.
Yeah. No, I mean, Jaws it's one of the best ever. And if you haven't seen it for some strange reason, definitely check it out.
Yep. HBO Max, baby. Check it out. So there you have it. Episode 73. We're getting up there, man. We're nearing 100. We're going to have something big if we make it that far.
Yeah.
But thank you all for listening. Be sure to follow us on social media at Inside Film Room on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, every platform. Hit us up at Inside Film Room, and be sure to rate and review, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Give us that 5-star rating, please. And you know what's next week? It's Hamilton. We're not messing up this time. Hamilton is happening. So that'll be interesting, considering Jake is someone who's listened to the soundtrack all the time. I've never listened to it. So we'll have a good contrasting opinions there. Or I don't know about opinions, but contrasting experiences heading into that.
I'm excited for it.
Me too. Hopefully we'll have an audience that survives the weekend, doesn't get eaten by sharks. So we'll see you next time.